Hi everyone, Ken from Miniature Wargaming Warriors, and today I'm going to be taking you through an introduction of how I got started in my Napoleonics. So this is for the 28mm. I'm just going to give you a rough guide of like decisions I decided to take and why I decided to make those decisions in getting started with this amazing period. First of all, I just want to point out the first fundamental thing that I decided to do was, even before you decide the rules you're going to play, is decide what scale you're going to do. For me, it was choice between 28mm, 15 or 6mm, depending on what you want to do model wise. So you've got different options. So for 28mm, you've got different manufacturers. You've got like Perry's, you've got Warlords, you've got Elite, loads of others. Literally loads, and I've lost count of how many. You've got like offensive miniatures and stuff like that. There's so many out there, and they're so widely available. So that could influence your decision. You've also got 6mm scale, which is like Bacchus, and he does some fantastic stuff at 6mm. And you've got a variety, and you've also got like your 15mm and stuff like that as well. So all depending on what different manufacturer you want to go with and how you want to do it, and also your opponent, depending again if you're going to play on your own or you're going to do like solo games, or are you going to make two armies, or are you going to go in with a friend and you're both going to do an army each. Scale is going to be your most important thing. There's so many different factors you have to take into consideration, like terrain as well. Have you got any terrain for that scale? Do you mind making new terrain for that scale? Do you mind buying new terrain for the scale that you're going to do? Or do you just want to keep it and say, for example, if you've got a lot of 28mm Second World War stuff, like old farmhouses, trees and stuff like that, it blends quite well with the Napoleonic period, so you haven't got to worry about that. But on the other hand, if you've only got like barely any terrain for 6mm, and you want to do 6mm, are you going to buy some, you're going to make some, what are you going to do? So that's one key aspect that I think you should really take into consideration before you start. The next thing I would suggest that you would do is select your rules once you select your scale. So we're going to start with we're going to go with a 28mm because that's what I'm doing at the moment. So we'll choose 28mm, but this can work again for 6mm, and I'll give you some examples. 28mm and 15mm, I find the rules for these, you can just vary with different scalings, and the same as 6. You do have specific rules for different scales. So 6mm, you're looking at more mass battles, huge battles, smaller amount of figures representing larger amounts, or you can do the complete opposite, try and go one for one man and do battalion sized regiments. It just depends what you want to do with your base. So we'll start with 28. So battalions are 24 or 36 depending on how you want to do it. And I'm doing the 24 because I can just get more figures for my buck, more battalions for my money. So for example, that will work out as you'll have, for me anyway, I've based mine on 60 by 40mm rectangles, which are these things. Okay, and you can also base on a 40 by 40, so you get rid of 20mm and it's just a square basically, and you can base 4 guys on them or however many you want. But I base 6 on these. So 4 bases for me. I have 4 with grenadiers on and 2 fusiliers on that first base. Then I have 6 fusiliers. That would be my second base. Then I have a command base, which can involve, depending on what battalion, I will have, because I'm doing French, an eagle bearer, and I will have a officer, a drummer, or maybe 2 drummers, depending if I'm doing guard or not. And I'll have 2 men to protect the eagle. And that'll be that base. And then my final base will be like my light company, so 2 fusiliers on there, and then I'll have 4 voltigeurs. And that'll be the light company. So that represents the whole battalion overall. If you're doing a 36-man setup for mine, I would do 6 grenadiers on one, 6 voltigeurs on the other side, do 1 command base, 6 again, and then I would make up the difference with 2 bases of, two or 3 bases of fusiliers, depending on making up to 36. I'm trying to do maths now. 6 is 36. So you'd end up with 6 bases. But then what that does is it widens like your battalion out, and and if you're playing on a 6x4, I really would suggest that you go with 24s. If you're playing on bigger tables, like say like a 10-foot by 6-foot, go for your 36 if that's what you really want to do. But it's your choice at the end of the day. So that's what I would do for 28mm, and the rules that I would choose for that would be black powder. So for me, black powder I've read a few different rule sets so far, and black powder seems to be really good, and it's really simple to pick up. So I've played 3 games so far of black powder over with 2 different opponents, and I've pretty much picked it up. It really is straightforward. You get a set amount of dice to shoot, so easy enough. It's really not hard. It all depends on the size of the unit and if they've got any special rules. So normal line battalion for the French, you get 4 dice, needing 4s if there's nothing in the way, and your unit's at full strength. So that's what I would do for that. And for 6 mil, now we have a choice, and the same with 15. You can use black powder rules. There's no reason you can't, and you could play it more true scale. So a battalion could involve, say, normally with your 6 mil bases, you have 24 figures on a base, and they represent maybe a brigade each, or a corps, for example, if you're playing a different period. But their bases are actually 24 6 mil figures, but it's normally on a 60 by 30 mil base. But what you could do, this is what I'm thinking about doing at some point with Napoleonics, maybe in a few years' time, is make it over. So I don't know, one guy represents, say, 6 men maybe instead. Or you could do a 1-for-1 scale, so you could do like 400 men, and you could just make mass ranks, and then end up having a battle with, say, a couple of battalions rather than 6 or 8, and do it that way, and just have loads of figures on the table, and that would look really cool. And 6 mil figures, again, very quick to pick up. There's also specific 6 mil rules as well. Polmus, if I'm pronouncing that right. They do 6 mil rules. I've got some for American Civil War. I was having a read through last night, and you could use the black powder rules again with these, depending on how I wanted to base them up. But you could also use the Polmus rules, and they come on the Bacchus website. You can check that out as well. And yeah, they look quite straightforward and don't look that complicated to do. And 6 mil overall, I don't think is going to be massively complicated. It's going to be as complicated as you make it. Same with any system. And 15 mil again, it's a really weird one, 15 mil, because I played black powder at 15 mil and thought it worked really well because you could get around the flanks. But again, I think you could adapt some of the 6 mil rules to just scale up to 15 mil. And it depends. If you want a really quick game, if you really want a simple set of rules, I think the black powder is like your best place to start with, and then you can get into more of your crunchy rules later on. So that's like your first step into Napoleonics. You decide what scale you're going to play, what set of rules you're going to play. Third thing is going to be what army you're going to play. Now, depending on the rule set you get, choose your army. So you can either let the rules dictate to your play style of how you're going to do it. So if you're brand new to 6 mil, if you're quite an aggressive player in other games, I would suggest the French. And you could, very aggressive army, your attack columns and stuff like that. If you're more of a defensive player, you might want to go with someone like the British. They're very renowned for their tactics for being defensive in black powder. You've got so many different minor factions you can pick. You can make Swedes if you want. Other major factions include like the Prussians. You can do cavalry and things like that. And depending on the models you want to go with as well. So that, everything does come together to make your decision. So I'd write down everything that I like and what I really want to prioritise. Do I want to prioritise being an aggressive player, like playing with the French? Do I really want to play the French? Or am I more that defensive player, but I'd rather play the French? You can still do that, but you might be better suited in the black powder rules as the British. Another question is going to be, are you like a solo gamer that wants to make 2 armies because the people in your group are not into Napoleonics, and you're going to have to make 2 armies up to, get people to play? Or are you like going in this with like a big mass of people, like 4 or 5 different people? You're all going to pick an army, and you're gonna do that together. So that's another thing to look out for on how to start off. So there's like I said, there's some different companies that do and different models and different miniatures. So for 28mm, I would suggest that you buy, if you're going to go with the black powder route, the starter set. If you're really new to it and you want to play the British and French, that's what I would suggest you do. If not, I'd go with one of the starter armies that Warlord Game does. and they do them for a variety of different armies. So like they do it for Prussians as well. If you're going to do 2 different sides, you could also, if you're going to go for one side, you could go the starter army for the British, or you could go for the starter army for like Prussians, whatever you want to do. And this is not even getting into what period within the Napoleonic period you want to do. So do you want to do the Peninsular War? Do you want to do the Russian campaign? Do you want to do the 100 Days War? And you're probably like, what are all these different things? They're all different campaigns that, you know, were fought throughout the Napoleonic period. And you don't have to decide primarily which one you want to do. So like my force, I've got Italians in mind. I'm doing the 100 Days, but to my knowledge, there wasn't any Italians in the 100 Days campaign. So, but I've done a battalion of them because I think they look cool, and my opponents don't mind if I field them as well. So it doesn't really matter, and it all depends on your opponents and what you want to do with yourself as a gamer. So there's so many different decisions that you're going to make, and you want to write it all down. You really do. You just want to write it down. There's different Facebook groups. I'll put some links in the show notes below to some of the Facebook groups that you can join. You've got the Napoleonic Wargamer. Just to give you a heads up, they've got some of the guys on there are very, very serious about this, about the Napoleonic War Games. Okay, they're very serious. Some of the guys are very casual. When you go on there, just take everything with a little pinch of salt. Just saying that, because some people will call you out for having buttons wrong and things like that, which is fine because that's their opinion and they're entitled to it. But just be careful. There are other groups like the Black Powder Wargaming group. I'll link that one as well. They're a lot. They're a bit more lenient, but both groups have a variety of knowledge that you know you as a newbie doesn't have. I've also got some uniform reference stuff for 100 Days. The website's in French, but you can use Google to translate it to English. And I'll stick that in the show notes below as well. It's all material for you. And there's also on YouTube a great series, and I will stick that in the show notes below. And this was recommended to me by Steve from On Point HQ, who's doing the same as me, new to Napoleonics, and it literally takes you through from the start of the Napoleonics to the very end, to the Battle of Waterloo, right to the very end. So it's like a 10-12 part mini series, and it is absolutely fantastic. And I suggest anybody that's either into Napoleonics or getting started or has been a veteran for years and hasn't seen it, watches it. It's really, really good. But that's pretty much what I would suggest you do to start with, is research, choose your army, choose your rule set, and go from there. You've got your paint and reference. Just get some paint on the miniatures. Do some research, read the rule books, and reach out to people in the community. Like you can ask me any questions you want at the bottom of the video if you're stuck. There's loads of different YouTubers that do Napoleonics. It's one of the most popular things for wargaming. And I don't know about you lot, but when I say wargaming, I always think of Napoleonics. So even when I was like younger and I wasn't into wargaming, someone said to me, "Oh, I play tabletop war games," I would automatically think of Napoleonic style and period. And I think it's a really great hobby to get into, and I think everyone can enjoy it. But just remember, it's also one of the most, I think it's one of the most, I wouldn't say difficult is the right word, but it's very heavy hitting when you first join. When you first start doing it, there's so much wealth of information to do. It's unreal. But that's for like the 28mm, and also that applies to like 6mm. And like I've been mentioning, Bacchus, I'll put that in the link, and I'll also put Warlords in there. None of these are affiliate links or anything like that. I'll just put them in there for a guide to help people. You can get everything on there. Bacchus for 6mm, so much stuff. And again, there's a 6mm Facebook group, and I'll stick that in the show notes as well. So that was pretty much like my basic guide, introduction to Napoleonic Wargaming. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. There's so much more I can talk about, and I'm sure I'll be doing another part to this at some point, just about like painting and things like that as well, and what to do after. But thank you very much for watching, guys. I'll see you again very soon, and bye bye for now.